1857 with horse-drawn cars, it was the first railway in the world to carry fare-paying customers. It closed in January 1960. We now move west to Carmarthen for a look at the line north to Aberystwyth. The line was part of an ambitious plan of the Manchester and Milford Railway. But with the Carmarthen and Cardigan Railway opening its line to Pencader, the total 57-mile route was opened throughout by 1867. From May 1939, the GWR raised the route classification from yellow to blue, and Manor Class 460s became associated until the end of through running in December 1964. 7827 Lyddham Manor is preparing to work north in 1964. One of Carmarthen's 7400 class pannier tanks, 7439, runs light through the station towards the shed. The departure is over the River Towie Bridge. The goods yard was on the left, and at Carmarthen Goods signal box the staff is picked up for the section to Conwill. At Aberystwyth Junction, the branch to Llandilo and the Central Wales line diverges right, closed in December 1963. First station was Bronwyth Arms, nowadays the headquarters of the preserved Gwilly Railway, which is opening its line north of here towards Conwill. At Conwill was the first passing loop, 6.5 miles from Carmarthen. The line climbed into the hills from Conwill to Llanpimsint. There were few inhabitants in this area, but there were goods facilities in the heyday of the line. The yard here has been taken over by a coal merchant. The Carmarthen and Cardigan built the line to broad gauge and did not take kindly to laying standard gauge rails for the Manchester and Milford arriving from the north. Pencader was where the two companies met, well, at the junction north of the station for the branch to Newcastle Emlyn actually. However, branch line trains began at the station, where there were sidings for freight traffic and even a single road engine shed in the beginning. 3671 and 7437 have arrived by the sidings south of the station. Splitting, the first runs light off to Lampeter. It's the 3rd of September 1964 and 3671 of Llanelli Shed prepares the morning freight to Newcastle Emlyn. The branch was worked on the one-engine in steam system, albeit with 2 staff sections. The staffs were fitted with Annette's keys to operate ground frames, and this is being done at Pencader Junction for access to the branch off the main line. We wait for the fireman to return with the staff before heading northwestwards following the River Tywelly for half a mile to reach Glantywelly crossing. This was an isolated crossing over a country lane. Safely past, we continue to Llandysul, 3 miles and 42 chains from Pencader Station. This was the original terminus of the Carmarthen and Cardigan Railway in 1864. The main buildings were on the upside, and the signal box of 27 levers was on the down, although no longer in use at this time. 3671 runs back up the loop to the rear of the train to shunt the goods yard. Inwards traffic included coal, beer and agricultural machinery. Cattle and sheep were dispatched from the pens adjoining the market on every other Tuesday. British Oil and Cake Mills had a store for Inwards cattle cake, poultry feed and pig meal. .3671 continues shunting the station area to load small items in the front covered van. On the footplate of 3671 we depart under the girder bridge over the station with a new single line staff for Newcastle Emlyn. The next bridge carried the A486 Carmarthen Road. The bridge over the River Tyvee brings us to the site of Pentracourt Platform, opened in 1912 and closed in 1952. The line is on the north bank of the River Tyvee and soon enters the 167-yard After Kevin Tunnel. At 7 miles 41 chains, Henflan is reached. The signal box had 23 levers and dated from around 1895. 3671 rests in the sun at this typical GWR country station. After Henflan, the line descends steeply at 1 in 80. Finally, Newcastle Emlyn Terminus is sighted, 10.5 miles from Pencaddock. The GWR reached here in July 1895 and built the station to the latest Great Western standards. Passenger services were withdrawn in September 1952. Freight continued until September 1973. The station milepost stated that it was 270 3/4 miles from Paddington. A small locomotive shed for the branch passenger engine, usually a pannier or auto tank, was on the north side. In 1964 a small hut remained for the pump house for locomotive water, steam being supplied by an engine. By the goods shed, petrol tanks for the Anglo-American Oil Company, later Esso, stand. Returning to Pencaddock, we find 7804 Baden Manor of Llanelli shed, arriving from Aberystwyth en route for Carmarthen. She was withdrawn from Seven Tunnel Junction in September 1965. .7827 Lyddham Manor arrives next to continue our journey north to Lampeter. After taking water, we are privileged to ride on the footplate of this 1950 built 460 on past the Newcastle Emlyn branch. First station was Bryn Tyvee, with a single platform and a few goods sidings. It had opened in 1869 as Cross Inn. There was a wonderful example of a GWR double signal on one post at the north end of the station. The fixed distance is for Mysore Craigie station, with a passing loop and staff exchange. There was just a single goods siding here. Next, a 4-mile run, usually allowed 8 minutes, to Llanybother. Llanybother had a modest goods yard. Pencarreg was one of the GWR's 1930s built halts, when they were all the fashion for the company. A southbound service with 7814 Fringford Manor awaits our arrival at Lampeter. There was a large dairy here. Notice the milk tanks at the rear of the Carmarthen-bound train. This was also an important commodity on the Aberystwyth branch, which we will now explore. 060 pannier tank 7437 is shunting milk tanks and preparing its freight to Aberystwyth, on which we will travel in the breakban. It's the 3rd of September 1964. North out of Lampeter, we travel along the Aberystwyth line to Aberystwyth Junction. The junction was controlled electrically from Lampeter signal box 1¼ miles away. The line was opened by the GWR as a light railway in 1911 for the 12 miles to Aberystwyth. The branch had a number of halts when the passenger services operated, first Cillian and then Blind Plwyth. Numerous crossings were encountered for which a 10 mph speed restriction was in force, and all trains had to be prepared to stop dead before fouling the crossings. Brakes were pinned down at the summit of the line for the descent at 1 in 40 through Talsarn to Vellinvarth. The down-home signal is clear. This was not provided by the GWR, but by Mackenzie and Holland of Worcester. The up-loop line was taken out in late 1962. One mile west of Vellinvarth was Green Grove Milk Factory, which gave a welcome boost to traffic on the branch when it opened in May 1951, the last passenger train having run the previous February. The factory was provided with a loop siding with access both ends, the farmman operating the points. Empty milk tanks are being shunted into the factory, which also produced dried milk to be loaded into vans. The factory was run by the Milk Marketing Board, and when opened in 1951 was known as Meadowland. Other halts were situated at Killy Iron and Llanerch Iron on the way to Aberystwyth. The crew of 7437 take a break, although the fireman is in the bunker bringing down coal to the footplate. Relics of the GWR were still evident, and the weighbridge office, whose capacity was 10 tons, still stood at the end of the goods yard. 7437 moves off to do the shunting. .7437 leaves its wagons to run down by gravity and passes the 1950s built warehouses for animal feed, used by Levers and Silcocks. A plate girder bridge carried the lines over the River Iron, next to which was the small signal box. The engine now takes on water. The supply was taken from the River Iron and pumped using steam from the locomotive's mason valve, which was normally used for steam heating of coaches. The engine shed was a sub of Aberystwyth, although the engine was usually supplied from Carmarthen. It was erected in 1925 and was a second-hand structure from Wrexham Central. Aberystwyth closed to all traffic in April 1965, leaving Green Grove open from Lampeter. That section closed in October 1973. We return to Lampeter, where Carmarthen's 7814 Fringford Manor arrives for Aberystwyth with empty milk tanks for Pontflanio behind the tender. This time the signal at Aberystwyth Junction is set for the main line. Next station was Derry Ormond, in the middle of nowhere and named after a nearby park. It had a signal box and goods siding, which had recently been lifted. Llangibby was just a single platform on the upside, and then after 35 miles from Carmarthen, Pontflanio, also with a single platform on the upside. A milk factory here provided a steady source of traffic, and Fringford Manor will detach the empty milk tanks and place them in the siding. Notice the larger than normal tender fitted to 7814 at this time. The next 3 miles to Tregaron follow the upper reaches of the River Teivi, which reaches the sea at Cardigan. Tregaron served one of the few major communities on this route. It was a market town amongst the hills, busy with sheep and cattle fairs. 7814 awaits a Carmarthen-bound service at this passing place. 5 miles north of Tregaron is Strata, Florida, named after a nearby Cistercian abbey. In Manchester and Milford days this was to be a junction for a line to Llanidloes. 7826 Longworth Manor will take us the final 14 miles to Aberystwyth. The line now encountered some steep gradients, with some stretches at 1 in 44 climbing northeastwards. The mileposts signify distances from Pencada on the extension of the Manchester and Milford Railway from Strata, Florida in 1866. The top of the bank is heralded by a short tunnel before Caradog Holt opened in 1932. We descend at 1 in 41 following the River Ystwyth to Trows Coed. Trows Coed had minimal facilities, a single platform and goods siding. passengers board for shopping at Aberystwyth, a 9-mile journey. The line follows the course of the River Ystwyth, passing Velindufrin Halt, opened in June 1935, to Llanellar. Llanrysted Road, with a single platform and one goods siding, was the last intermediate stopping place before Aberystwyth. The hill of Pendinas heralds our approach to Aberystwyth. The River Ystwyth reaches the sea as we descend into the town at 1 in 42. We cross the narrow gauge Vale of Rydal railway. At this time, the narrow gauge shed was on the left. We arrive in Aberystwyth number 4 platform. The average journey time from Carmarthen took between 2.5 and 3 hours for the 56-mile trip. The fireman on 7826 wipes his brow. Longworth Manor is released from platform 4 by a classmate, which is also shunting ore tanks. The manors were long associated with Aberystwyth. In the summer of 1964, 11 of the class of 30 were on the Cambrian section, and 2 more visited from Llanellar shed, Carmarthen shed having been closed in the April. Dr. Beeching proposed closure to passengers over the Carmarthen route in March 1963 and was to be implemented in February 1965. However, serious flood damage occurred on the 14th of December 1964 at Llanellar, and a bus service was substituted between Strata, Florida and Aberystwyth. 10 weeks later, on the 22nd of February 1965, the planned closure took place. Today, the narrow gauge Vale of Rydal trains use the Carmarthen platforms. Having turned at the